Let's start here. Being broke isn't just a financial state, it's a mental one. When you're broke, your biggest obstacle isn't the lack of dollars, it's the presence of fear. You fear losing what little you have. You fear taking risks. You fear that every setback confirms something deep down, that maybe you're not good with money, and that fear keeps you trapped. Here's the paradox. People who stay broke often work harder than anyone else. They hustle, they grind, they survive, but their energy goes towards survival, not strategy. They're always reacting instead of planning. That's because the broke mindset is built on scarcity thinking. It's the belief that money is finite, that there's only so much to go around, and if someone else gets more, you get less. It's why broke people chase short-term wins and instant gratification. They don't trust the long game because the short game has always been a struggle. The first mental shift to becoming an investor starts right here. Realizing that money is a tool, not a reward. It's not something you chase, it's something you control. And control doesn't start with cash, it starts with clarity. Think about this. Every wealthy person you've ever heard of once stood at zero. What changed wasn't luck. It was the way they looked at their situation. Instead of saying, "I can't afford this," they started asking, "How can I afford this?" That single question turns a wall into a doorway. If you're broke, it's easy to feel powerless, but the truth is, power is a mindset, and money flows to those who take responsibility for how they use it. You can't invest in stocks or real estate right away, maybe, but you can invest in habits that build wealth, tracking expenses, setting automatic savings, learning a new skill. Those are investments too. They don't just grow money, they grow your identity. The first shift is about rewriting your relationship with money, seeing it as energy that flows through you, not away from you. Once you stop fearing money and start directing it, you've already taken your first step from broke to investor. Scarcity says, "I can't save because I don't earn enough." Strategy says, "I'll start with what I have because that's how momentum begins." The first major mindset shift is this. You don't need more money to start. You need a better plan. When people think from a place of scarcity, they believe the equation goes like this. Income, then expenses, and whatever is left becomes savings. But investors flip that equation. For them, it's income, then savings or investments, then expenses, and finally leftovers. That's not just a budgeting trick, it's a mental reprogramming. It tells your brain, "I pay myself first." That's the foundation of wealth. Not by waiting to earn more someday, but by choosing to prioritize your future today. This shift also changes how you see risk. When you're struggling financially, risk feels like danger, like you're gambling your safety. But when you think strategically, you realize risk itself isn't the problem, unmanaged risk is. So you learn to measure it. You build small safety buffers. You learn before you leap. You take calculated risks. And suddenly, what used to feel scary now feels like strategy. That's how investors think. They don't run from risk, they manage it. Let's be honest, most people don't fail because of one big mistake. They fail because of hundreds of small emotional decisions that slowly drain them. Eating out when stressed, buying things to feel better, or delaying learning because it feels too late. Strategy fixes that, it gives structure to emotion. Here's a simple exercise. Before every purchase, ask yourself, will this make me richer, poorer, or the same? If you do that for just 30 days, you'll start to see how much money slips away through emotional spending. Scarcity makes you impulsive. Strategy makes you intentional. And once you get intentional, even with small amounts, you start to see something powerful. It's not about having more. It's about using what you already have in a smarter way. That's the first real step from being broke to becoming an investor. Turning your decisions into a plan instead of a panic. Here's the second big shift, from spending money to owning value. Most people spend their entire lives working for money and then spend that money buying things other people own. Investors do the opposite. They use their money to own the things everyone else spends on. That's not philosophy, that's leverage. You buy a cup of coffee every day? Someone owns the company that sells it. You stream shows on Netflix? Someone owns the stock. You complain about rent. Someone owns the property. The difference between broke and investor isn't income, it's ownership. Because ownership multiplies, consumption ends. When you buy, you get temporary pleasure. When you invest, you get recurring power. But here's the tricky part. This shift doesn't just require money, it requires patience. Owning assets takes time. The broke mindset craves speed. The investor mindset trusts its compounding. Compounding doesn't just apply to money, it applies to choices. Every time you choose to invest instead of spend, you're compounding discipline. Every small win becomes a vote for your future self. And when that starts adding up, you stop feeling broke. You start feeling in control. Even if you only invest $50 a month, you're building ownership habits. You're teaching your brain, I'm not just a consumer. I'm a creator. Here's the psychological power in that. Consumers chase dopamine. Owners chase dividends. Consumers need validation. Owners build independence. Once you start owning even a fraction of something, your energy changes. You stop chasing hype and start scanning opportunities. You look at the economy differently. Instead of complaining about inflation, you ask how to benefit from it. This is where most people's financial lives transform. When they stop measuring their life by what they buy and start measuring it by what they build. Because the ultimate wealth isn't just financial, it's mental. It's waking up knowing your money is working harder than you are. That's what ownership does. It turns time into an ally instead of an enemy. The final shift isn't about money at all, it's about identity. Every investor, every entrepreneur, every person who breaks out of financial struggle had to make this mental leap. Stop identifying as a worker and start identifying as an investor even before the money shows up. When you think like a worker, you trade time for money. You see income as something you earn. When you think like an investor, you trade ideas for returns. You see income as something you create. That shift changes everything. A worker says, I need to make more. An investor says, I need to make my money make more. A worker sees a job as the end goal. An investor sees it as fuel for the next move. You can have the same job, same salary, same routine, and still live like an investor if your mindset is focused on growth, leverage, and ownership. Start asking yourself, how can I multiply what I earn? What can I learn that pays forever? What can I build that works while I sleep? That's investor thinking. The truth is, most people wait for permission to think rich. They wait until they have money to start acting like someone who understands it. But it works in reverse. You start thinking like an investor first, that's what creates the money. You'll notice a pattern among people who stay broke. They're waiting. Waiting for the economy to change, for luck to strike, for someday to start investing. But someday isn't a date, it's a decision. Investors don't wait for confidence. They build it through small, consistent action. And the beautiful part? You don't need thousands to start. You need curiosity, patience, and a plan. Once you embrace that, money stops being this mysterious enemy. It becomes a mirror reflecting how you think. Because ultimately, every dollar is a vote. And when you invest, you're voting for your future self to win. There's something few people tell you about becoming an investor. The real reward isn't money. It's peace. When you stop living paycheck to paycheck, when your decisions aren't ruled by panic or pressure, you start to experience a kind of calm most people never feel. That calm gives you choices, and choices are freedom. You can take a break without going broke. You can say no to toxic jobs. You can focus on things that matter, not because you're rich, but because you're not trapped. That's the real wealth, not cars or houses, but control over your time. Going from broke to investor isn't about luck, hustle culture, or secret strategies. It's about slowly upgrading your mindset from fear to focus, from reaction to creation. The truth? Most people could change their financial trajectory in 2 years if they worked on mindset before mechanics. Because once you think differently, you act differently. And once you act differently, results follow naturally. That's why investors stay calm in storms. They're not playing the short game anymore. They've already built systems, habits, and patience. Money follows that kind of energy. And the best part, you can start right now, not when you have more, but when you decide to think more strategically about what you already have. Because broke isn't forever. It's just a phase between awareness and action. Becoming an investor isn't about how much you earn, it's about how much you evolve. Once you shift from scarcity to strategy, from consumer to owner, and from worker to investor, the game changes forever. Because wealth isn't built in your wallet, it's built in your mind first. The rest is just compound interest.